What is going on, guys? It's the MaD Dragon. Six Nations just around the corner, kicking off this evening. And with the Six Nations, of course, comes the Fantasy League. So we've had so many people signing up to the Fantasy that we actually filled the league. And I've had to get in contact with the guys over at the Six Nations to increase our pool size to now be 1,000 players in order to accommodate everyone. If you aren't signed up to the Fantasy League, all the links and codes and all that good stuff will be in the description. There is also a video up on the channel which you can go and find. But with so many new people trying out the Fantasy for the first time, I've been reading your guys' comments, you're giving it a go. It's free and easy to set up, so, why not give it a go? But I realised with so many new people joining in, some people might be a little bit lost in how does the Fantasy work? How do I go about picking a team? What are some good player choices? All that good stuff. So I thought, you know what? Let's build the team that I'm going to be going for in the first round of the Fantasy for the official Six Nations one, not the Superbru one, because that one is a little bit more in depth. But what I thought we can do this way is I can actually showcase to you guys how does the Fantasy work, who are some good players to be picking, and how to maybe go about making your own decisions going forwards throughout the rest of the Six Nations. So a bit more of a tips and tricks and a how-to video along with going over some players for the Fantasy so people might find useful. Now, I came 13th in the world in the autumn internationals using the Six Nations. I've got a little bit more used now to the scoring system and what they do. So I think there's a lot of things that a lot of people new to this might find interesting. So let's start out with how I go about building a team, and maybe these can be some useful tips for you along the way. Now, my first thing I like to do is take a look at the matches that are on. So these are the three games that are going on this weekend. We've got France versus Wales, Scotland versus Italy, Ireland versus England. Now, we're allowed to pick players from every team if you want to, but typically teams that win, their players score more points because their team went on to win. They probably ran more meters, they probably played longer, they probably scored more points and what have you. Not always the case. There are certainly instances where team players on the losing team, maybe made more tackles, or maybe if a team lost 30 points to 20, those entire 20 points were done by the fly half, in which case that fly half scored really well. So what I like to do first of all is go through and pick the teams I think are going to win on the weekend, and then that's probably what I'll be building my team around. Like I say, don't necessarily have to be, bang on along the line, but that's something to think about. Now, for me, going into the home match this weekend, I'm thinking it's probably going to be France, Scotland, Ireland. That's how I'm thinking about it going in. I can see France having a really good game. That's the team I want to probably focus on the most. I really see them having a good game versus Wales. Scotland versus Italy genuinely might go either way. At the minute, I'm still favouring Scotland, so I'm going to back those Scottish players. But Italian players, cheaper for the budgetary reasons, but could be some good picks along the way. And then Ireland, England, another one that could cause a slip-up. England won this fixture last year. But for me, Ireland going into this one with a big stacked team, I can certainly see them wanting to really turn up for this one and put a good score. So bearing that in mind, I'm probably looking at the majority of my team being French, Scottish, because those are the boys I think are going to score more points. Now, I think France are going to put in a big score, so I'm already thinking I want a French kicker. Now, France have two available kickers. They have Romain Ntamack, who plays fly half. They also have Thomas Ramos, who plays at 15, who is an absolutely brilliant player. And that's where I'm going to be starting off because he typically takes their kicks for them, and that's a guy I want. Now, something to bear in mind, you start out with 230 stars. That's the sort of currency in the game. So you've got to build around that budget as well. But I know I want Thomas Ramos in because he's going to be kicking all day for France. I can see France putting on a big score, and I certainly think having a French kicker is going to be massively important. Now, unlike the Superbru one, you don't have to nominate a kicker in this one. If they kick, they just happen to, get those points for conversions and penalties and what have you. So, I'm also now thinking if I'm going to go for the French kicker there, I'm looking elsewhere for who I want at fly half. Who else is going to be kicking for a team? Now, typically 10s are going to be kicking. Finn Russell's probably going to be a good choice going against Italy. I can see them wanting to kick a lot. However, someone that is coming in as maybe a bit of a cheaper option, and I'm willing to change this as we go. Sam Prendergast for Ireland, who enjoy a tight game versus England. There's always normally penalties and going on. Sam Prendergast has got the nod over Jack Crowley this weekend. You could maybe also go for a Marcus Smith in here, even though in my own world I've said I've gone for Ireland over England. Marcus Smith for running meters and stuff, always very exciting, so I wouldn't be surprised if some people wanted to put a Marcus Smith in here, but let's go with that for now. I'm going to go back to my wingers because this is where your big point scorers are, right? If they get all the tries, we saw players like Darcy Graham in the Autumn International scoring a hat-trick, or 4 tries, loads and loads of points. So looking to your wingers, like I said, I'm going to go back to France. I think France are the big boys. Damien Penaud's out with his injury, so won't be in this game. So we're looking at the likes of Louis Bielbiarri or Atisogbe as the 2 French wingers. Louis Bielbiarri is an absolute monster at the minute. He's in great form. He is absolutely going to be my winger on the left-hand side. I think he's a superb player, and I'm expecting him to score pretty well against Wales, so I'll get him in there. Now, personally, I don't like to lock out departments for one team, just in case that area ends up actually not being that effective. Maybe France keep it between the forwards and suddenly all my backs aren't scoring a lot of points. So I like to mix it up. So we're having a look at the other wing. Who do we want on the other wing? I'm looking at another team here. Now, do I go for Scotland? Do I go for Ireland? Now, the Scotland team are going up against Italy. They've gone for a 5-3 this weekend, so I don't think there's anything wrong with going for a Scottish winger. Your options for here are you can go for Darcy Gray and Duhan van der Merwe, or Blair Kinghorn, also plays a back 3. I like to try and keep positional, just for the sake of it. It doesn't give you any bonuses. In fact, it probably hinders me, but I enjoy trying to keep them sort of along the same positions. I'm going to go for Darcy Graham, a little bit more budget. He's 16 compared to 19 for Duhan van der Merwe. Absolutely a good pick to be looking at Duhan van der Merwe there. Darcy Graham, though, in good form. I might have a look at someone like Darcy Graham. So where else are we filling out the French players then? Because we want a few more French lads in here, because I do think they'll have a good game against Wales. Scrum half is an area I certainly can see a lot of people all going down one route here. Antoine Dupont, the best player in the world, with air quotes, for whoever you think is there. But Antoine Dupont's a superb scrum half, certainly a dangerous player to look for those points. So Antoine Dupont's going to be going in there for me, my scrum half. Someone that I think is probably going to be a slightly underrated player. Oh, and he's not even on the first page. Can I just do a filter by France here for me? Paul Boudouin, who performed extremely well last year and came on and scored some big points. I've got a lot of faith in my boy Paul Boudouin to go on there and make some big impact into that game. And now you can see that I filled in my final player there with Paul Boudouin. All of my French players are now greyed out. I'm only allowed 4 from any team to stop people just building a team of one side and what have you. So that's my 4 French players that I've gone for there. I'm pretty happy with my decisions. Might change them later on as we go. Next one then to have a think about then is probably going to be the rest of my Scottish players. Who do I see doing well in Scotland? I can see Scotland wanted to play quite expansively. They've gone for the 5-3 versus Italy 6-2 on the bench, which means Italy are going to want to keep it probably more between the forwards. Scotland might want to play a little bit wider. I'm looking at my Scottish centres here, and Stavik McDowell is cheap. Could be an interesting pick there. I certainly want Hugh Jones. I think he's a very, very good, talented player and can make some very good meters for Scotland. So I certainly want to have Hugh Jones in there. So moving down, then we haven't got any of my front rowers. Nothing wrong with the Scottish front rowers. Xander Vegas and Schoeman certainly score some big points in this series. I'm going to go for Schoeman as my loose head prop in that area. But I might even go the other side and do a Xander Ferguson pick there as well, and also have a bit of a Scottish lockout in terms of your front row. Italy are a tough scrummaging team. Could come back to bite me, but we'll see how we settle for now. That's all my Scottish guys done. So let's have a look what Ireland have got up their sleeves. And now a lock player that I absolutely love, Tyg Byrne, I think is a superb lock. So I certainly want to have Tyg Byrne in there. Centre partnership of Bundy Aki and Gary Ringrose is always dangerous. I can see Bundy Aki having a good old amount of time on the ball going up against the England squad. So let's throw Bundy Aki in there as well. Now, I've really locked out of the teams that I've thought are going to be winning. So now it's about picking the players that you think are still going to score well, even from teams that maybe you're expecting to sort of go on to lose the game. And someone that did exceptionally well last year in the Six Nations is Ben Earl from England as the number 8. He is had a really, really good tournament. I think he actually might have scored the highest points on average per round of any player in the Six Nations last year. So certainly one to keep your eye on. I've got Ben Earl going in there in the number 8 shirt. In the lock department, I'm probably going to be going for Maro Itoje as well as captain. Now I'm expecting to have a good game for England and put in some good tackle work as well. Now, I've encountered a problem, which many of you may come across. My currency is running slightly low. My budget is down to 23, and I have still got 2 positions to fill. makes it a bit of a nuisance. So we're already having to look at a bit of a rejig, and at this point, this is where the complicated aspect of the fantasy comes from, because you've got to start devaluing your team a little bit just to try and help out with your budget constraints. Now, I'm happy with my back three. I really like those back three choices. Antoine Dupont as your scrum half is, always a really good scrum half to come in. However, does cost a lot in terms of your points, so that's certainly a big area of my budget there. An area where I'm trying to look at maybe where I can save. Xander Fagerson, I'm gonna get rid of, and instead look at the props, but maybe some players who are a little bit further down in terms of your cost. Who we got there? We've got Finlay Beelum, Simone Ferrari, Will Stewart's down there at a 9. That saves a couple of points along the way. Well, it's taken a bit of juggling around, but I've eventually managed to get my team within budget. I had to sacrifice my Hugh Jones pick, which is, straight to the heart. Such a shame. I really wanted to have Hugh Jones in. I just couldn't find the currency to make it work elsewhere. But Breck's going in, who was my personal player of the tournament last Six Nations. He's slightly cheaper in that outside centre department, so I've slotted him in. I've made some cheaper picks in terms of your lock areas. Dino Lamb coming in was a cheap pick, but he's a very good player for Italy. And Danilo Fischetti going in instead of Xander Fagerson in that scrum department means that I have been able to get my completed team and still leaving me with 12 stars. Now, what 12 stars allows me to do is go on to my super sub. Now, this was something the first time I did the Six Nations I didn't take that seriously, because basically the way the super sub works is if the player in real life comes on from the bench, everything they score after coming on from the bench gets multiplied by 3. Now, that turns into really, really big points if they end up doing well, or maybe an injury to a starting player means they come on 3 minutes into the game. Suddenly, this guy's got a whole 80 minutes to play to himself, and he gets 3 times the amount of points. It's a really vital pick, and I absolutely recommend keeping some stars behind to try and keep a super sub. And actually, what I've done amongst all this team is I've actually gone for 1 extra Italian player to keep me available to have 1 Scottish player who even though I think that team's going to win, I've specifically left someone out of my starting team in order to keep them available here. So my options are, who's coming on from the bench? I either have Kyle Rowe or Tom Jordan. So I can pick either one. Kyle Rowe's a back 3 player. I could see coming on, but I can see Duhan van der Merwe and Darcy Graham spending the full 80 on for the game. I'm not sure when Kyle Rowe would come on, and minutes played is part of the scoring system, so I'm questioning where to put him in. Tom Jordan is there for courage for fly half, but also can do fullback and can make quite a big impact into the team. So for me, I'm going down the Tom Jordan route to be able to pick him as my super sub, leaving me with all of 1 star remaining, and that leaves me with just picking my captain. Now, my captain will get ×2 for whatever points they score, and you can pick any player. There's a couple of different ways to look at this. You can either go for a forward who you think is going to have a good game, lots of tackles, that sort of thing will keep those points ticking away. Maybe you look at someone like Antoine Dupont, who's always good for scoring tries. Maybe you look at your kickers, because they get extra points for conversions and penalties, and they all get doubled if you go for a kicker. But I like to roll the dice. I like to be a little bit risque, and I like to typically go for a winger, because if they happen to get a couple tries in a game, that adds up to some huge points. For me, the biggest scoreline I think for these teams will be for France, so I'm already looking at a French player for me. I'm over here. Louis Bielbiaré will be my captain. I think he's a superb player, even though he's going up against Wales, who is the team I support beyond the channel. I can still see him doing extremely well up against Tom Rogers this weekend on that wing. Tom Rogers certainly got the size, but Bielbiaré certainly having the pace. That's why I'm looking for my French winger. There's a couple of other things you guys might want to take into consideration. Maybe you want to, like I said, go for a captain as a forward pick. Maybe, in terms of your super sub, you're actually wanting to look at some different players. Maybe you want to go for a super sub to actually be a hooker. And that way, when they come on from the 60-minute marker or something, they go for a driving maul try. Boom! 3 times the amount of points. There are some picks here that I think you could certainly look at, and some players I sort of nominate for you guys to maybe consider for your own teams. Dan Sheehan for Ireland could certainly be a really good pick there coming on in the second half for Ireland, but does cost a lot of points. Ross Vincent for Italy is a really, really rapid back rower and is certainly one that can break away in the second half when other players are tired and is quite cheap. Could be someone to look out for there. In your fly half shirt, you know, I've gone for Sam Prendergast. I don't think there's anything wrong there. We're going for a Finn Russell, a Marcus Smith. It's just about trying to balance your budget a bit and make them all fit in. I can see both those two actually maybe scoring better than Sam Prendergast, but I'm relying on a few more for penalty kicks for Ireland and wanting to turn up for a big game for him, but also for budget reasons gives me a little bit more room to play with in other circles. But hopefully you guys have all enjoyed this one today. Hopefully you found it all a little bit informative if you've never played along before and you're just looking for some tips and tricks on how you should go about maybe creating your team. I always recommend starting out with picking the teams you think you're going to win first, add those players into your team to begin with, and then maybe try and fit the rest of your team around. Keep a keen eye on things like who's going to be taking the kicks for each team so you don't accidentally double up on players in the same position who are going to be taking kicks and you don't end up not adding them into the team. Keep an eye on your captain for your double points, but also highly, highly recommend keeping some stars aside so you can get your super sub in, get those times 3 points. Hopefully all been useful, guys. Of course, we'll be going over the results for the fantasy across the board in Monday's video, so make sure you hit the subscribe button to keep up to date with all the latest videos on the channel. I'll see you all next time, guys. Bye-bye.